How's it going, guys?
What's up, Raymond? How are you doing, man?
I am doing well. Back home in California.
A,
Actually,
a,
just saw
lo-
Brian yesterday.
a lot warmer weather. We're getting crushed with snow here in Michigan.
Yeah, I imagine.
Uh,
I used to live in
I'm from
Chicago.
Florida, so it's actually cold. It's cold for me here. Like I'm like dying over here. It's not snowing though.
Yeah, yeah. I'm yeah. I don't feel sorry for you on that one. It's
No
like 20.
empathy
It's
on this
20
one.
degrees here. It's 20 degrees here.
Jesus.
Yeah, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is that basketball court in the back. Maybe tell us a little bit about that painting. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, so one of my so I guess the basketball court. I mean, every kid's childhood dream is to have a basketball court. So it took me a couple years to convince the wife. Once we realized like we're staying in Michigan for sure because our kids are in school, she gave me the go ahead. Like, let's build this gym. With for me, I blamed it on the kids that the kids want it, but really it's more of something I enjoy. And then the painting on the back is my buddy Patrick, who's like just one of the top artists in the world. His gift to me was to paint that mural, kind of like a housewarming gift, but I guess more of a basketball court warming gift. So yeah, it's me versus Jordan, but instead of using my body, which is slightly overweight, we decided to use Blake Griffin's body. But I don't really tell people that.
Okay.
Looks a lot better.
Let me ask you a question. Who uses the courts more? Your kids or you?
So we actually have league night twice a week. So Thursdays and
Okay.
Sundays, we have like 10 or 15 guys here, especially during COVID. A lot of the gyms were closed down. So we were playing a lot, but like we have a bounce house we put up for the kids. Like it's a lot of fun, and like all the neighborhood kids come over. So honestly, it's probably 50-50.
Okay.
So
All right.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
staying
yeah.
true to the word.
Yeah. The kids are getting their use out of it.
Well, yeah. Well, let's talk about cards. Jason, why don't you give us some background about yourself? Maybe start from the beginning, how you got into the hobby to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I gave you the whole story, we could be here for hours. But I mean, honestly, my story is almost identical to everybody else's, where we all collected as kids, right? Starting 10, 11 years old. For me, it was the Shaq Grant Hill era. And then everybody else, when they turn, 14 or 15, kind of veered off into other stuff. And I was lucky enough to kind of stick with cards. And I found out about card shows. And once I found out about card shows and all the flipping and hustling, obviously it's way different than being in a card shop. Because when you're in a card shop, like you're at the mercy of the owner of the shop, right? But once you go to a show, everything is a complete, like, I remember it was like entering a whole new world. Like, you could negotiate, you couldn't negotiate in shops. So I think once I hit my first card show, I was so addicted. Um, I I initially thought I wanted to be an architect, but that first card show, I was like, I want to do this full time. So I stayed with it and kept hustling and hustling. One of the top guys in the hobby at the time, I went and took an internship for free and worked for him. But at a very early age, I was, 14, 15 years old, traveling all over the country, going to shows. And then I kind of stumbled upon grading. And this is the crazy thing about grading is compared to where we're at today is like in 95, 96, PSA would actually come up to your booth and try to convince you of why you should give them your cards. And obviously we know of like there's years and years backlogged right now or whatever it is, but and all these old time. So I was the young guy back then. All the old timers were dinosaurs, and which is not to get off subject, but one of the coolest things right now is there's so many kids in the hobby right now. And I was the only one back then, like me and a few other guys. And now it's hundreds, thousands of kids, 13 to 20-year-old, walk around flipping. They got, $100,000 in their suitcase of cards. And the older guys are kind of retiring, dying off, and it's becoming a younger game again, which when I was in it, it was all older people. And when the PSA would come around, they would say, well, I don't need you. Who the hell are you to tell me what my cards are graded? So a lot of the older guys didn't buy into the grading right away. And I just kind of thought it was going to be the next best thing. So I graded my first card in 1995. And, kind of just ever since then, it's just, a lot of up and down in the grading world. But like I said, we could talk for 2 hours of the entire path. But, I just think it's really interesting seeing how graded cards have evolved from PSA going from, hey, try us out to where they're at today. And not just PSA, all the grading companies. So yeah, I did that for a while, built up a bankroll, did really well in high school, decided not to go to college, actually went to Michigan State for like a week and was like, this is stupid. I'm gonna just, this is stopping me from going to shows. So I got
power move.
Yeah. So when I was, I think 23, like 2004, I thought it'd be a really cool idea. I'm young, I'm dumb, I don't know what I'm doing. And I built up my collection to probably 14 or 15 million at the time. And I thought it would be fun to say I'm retired. And so I sold everything off. And it was different back then. Like now everybody has these $500,000 cards and $1 million cards and all this. We didn't have that back then. But what we had was Dante Culpepper SP Authentic 10 was 4,000. Vince Carter SP Authentic 10 was 20,000. And you could sell quantity. You could walk, somebody, kind of how people invest today, but you could sell 10 of those for 200,000. So it was a different world as far as liquidating the assets. But so I sold off my collection, like I said, because I thought it'd be cool to say I'm retired. Sure enough, within a few weeks, I'm bored out of my mind, and I dump all my money into Florida real estate, 05, 06, just before the crash.
Right.
So I was able to turn 15 million into about negative 1 million in a couple of years. So I had to regroup, and I went back to cards and started to build the back. And to show you where the whole world collapsed, right? Like in 07. And I was thinking back at some moments because I remember the 07, might have been the 08 National. Someone offered me 2 Jeter SP10s for the pair. He wanted 4,500. I offered him 3,500. And we ended up settling at 4,000. I think I flipped the deal for like 5 or 5,500 for 2 of them, which is kind of, like, it's just, it's just mind blowing. It's like a $500,000 card now. So yeah, like I went back to what had originally, made me my money. The only difference was this time I still had all my relationships, so everything I had built up over the years. Borrowed 25,000 off a friend to get started again. Went to the casino that night, pissed it all away. That was a pretty depressing moment, and then realized I'm going to need a little bit bigger bankroll than that. Went to someone else and borrowed 250K, was off to the races, and built it back up. And the next 12 years was a really good card run, and every year it seems to be better than the year before. This year there was a little bit of a setback with NFTs and some other stuff in the economy, but I'm still very bullish long-term, 5-10 years down the road on the market.
So were you involved in memorabilia and the athlete signings during this entire period, or is it something that you decided to get into later on in your journey?
So yeah, cards has always been by far the front runner. I've always flipped memorabilia. It's different because cards are so much more liquid than memorabilia, but memorabilia has crazier margins. Like when people want to get rid of memorabilia, they just want to dump it and be done with it. But at the same time, if you need to liquidate a piece of memorabilia, you have to find the right buyer. So they're 2 completely different worlds. I have some cool stuff here. Like I'll show you this. So this right here is one of my favorite pieces. So this is a 1939 envelope. So this is the inaugural Hall of Fame. He goes around and gets all 11 autographs from the original Hall of Fame, goes to the post office, gets it time-stamped from Cooperstown Post Office, and signed by the postmaster too. This kind of stuff. Yeah, I love memorabilia. Yeah, as far as the athletes and stuff going, that kind of happened maybe 5 or 6 years ago. One of the first big guys was Dimitri Young. He's a baseball player. He collected in the early 2000s. We became really close, and he wanted to build a Hall of Fame PSA 10 collection. But he was the biggest name celebrity-wise in cards. And then starting in 2010, 11, 12, bigger names started to get involved. I was dealing with higher end stuff. So I started to become friends with a lot of these athletes, celebrities. So that's what kind of got me down that path of just chatting in the living room for, there was a lot of surreal moments where I don't want to say names, but some of the biggest musicians in the world or athletes where I'd be sitting in their living room and chatting cards, and I'm like, this person has dedicated time to me, and it's bringing back their childhood. They're so excited. So I became really good friends with a lot of these guys, and I thought to myself, well, if other people are doing signings with them and appearances and all that, like why don't I kind of just step in here and take 10% and make some money that way? So that's a percentage of the business, but dealing with that, it's kind of frustrating and annoying. Like they can be prima donnas and it's always,
really?
Yeah. It's,
a celebrity being a prima donna?
I mean, there's some horror stories where it's just like, where someone's like, hey, get me a deal, and you bring them a deal and say, hey, here's, for $75,000, I need you to sign for 2 hours in your living room, and then they pass and turn it down, and you're just like, are you kidding me? Like this is 2 years salary for a lot of people. So when you deal with that, it gets really frustrating. But no, going back to cards, it always keeps me grounded. I collect, I deal, like I'm more of a collector now than anything. I just a hoarder investor. And there's three types of people. There's pure collector, and there's collector investor, and then there's investor, right? And the pure collector, like they want the market to tank, and they want to just buy what they want, and they get totally frustrated and get mad at everybody when the market goes up and thinks it's a scam and all this stuff. And I get it, because all they want to do is collect what they want to collect. And then you have the collector investor who buys what they want, and they're happy when it goes up, but they also enjoy it. And then there's all the money that's come in the last couple of years is strictly investor money that understands that these tangible assets have a lot of value, a lot more value than they've had in previous years, and they could care less about the commodity. They just want to dump money into this market. So those people have no emotional attachment, and they're just long-term investors. So
I actually want to go back real quick. You said that you tried out PSA. What was the first card that you graded with PSA? Do you remember?
94 Marshall Falk SP.
What grade did you get?
Sorry, take that back. That was the second card. So the first story is amazing. So I was at Sports Fest in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And I bought a Griffey Upper Deck, and it was in a screw down. And at the time, I think I paid $125 for it. I went and pre-sold it to somebody in a PSA 10. So I dropped the card off at PSA. I think it was like $35 to the show or whatever it was. And I went to another dealer friend. I said, oh yeah, this card's a lock 10. Pre-sold it to him for $600, which is hilarious. Like thinking, so I get it back from PSA the next day. It's an 8. So probably had like, it's probably got like a lifted corner or something. So I have to go give this guy his money back. But it was just funny thing. And of course I like bitched at PSA, like, oh, you switched my card out, all this the stuff, all the bullshit that people deal with today. Like, like when you don't know what you're doing. And now looking back, it's like obvious that the card had some type of lifted corner or something. But, like the confidence that I was to pre-sell it was kind of funny. So that was the first time. And then I was upset and I regrouped. And then I remember I sent another order in with some Marshall Falks, Jerome Bettis SP, all that stuff. And then it was off to the races.
Yeah, that's super interesting to think about just how far back. Because I mean, right now, the way we look at PSA is completely different brand that how they kind of just grew and scaled.
Oh yeah, I would say it's just mind blowing because like there's nobody left that's been around as long as I've been. Like I've been around 26 years. Like I've been doing this. So I mean, to the point where like you can't even submit to PSA right now. They're backed up. But like I remember when they used to call me and say, "Hey, we need cards," and I would like negotiate the price and get it down to like $2.50 a card. Like, and they're like, "Hey, well, you need to overnight is 10,000 cards right now." I'm like, "Okay, done." Like $2.50 a card. And now it's obviously they have all the the power. But I have a lot of PSA in my collection, so I'm still a big PSA supporter. But it's just changed. The game's changed.
Yeah. But going back though, you it seems like you've been hustling just from the get-go, right, up until like now. But at like when you're at around 25 years old, right, like what would you give yourself, or would you give yourself different, an advice that would say, hey, what would you tell young Jason differently, or would you not? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, so there's the personal side, and then there's the business side. The personal side, I would just tell young Jason at 25, like, you have so much time. Stop stressing and stop setting these crazy goals. And if you don't hit a goal, don't get depressed over it. Remember, like at 25, I was broke again. Like I had built up this, huge. So I mean, I was in a super stressful spot. Yeah. So, and that's on the personal side. On the business side, I would say, okay, you took that few weeks off, you wanted to retire, you realized that wasn't a good idea. Like, don't go into real estate. Like tunnel vision, like cards. So along the way, I'm invested in like 16 different companies. I've done well in some stuff, other stuff's crashed. But ultimately, the best I've done this along this entire path has been cards. So I would go back and tell myself, even though there's going to be some wins, like you need to be tunnel vision, cards, all your money, like just stick with what you know, and stop trying to get cute with all this other stuff. And that really would be. I'm in a pretty good spot right now, but if I just took that advice and did all cards, ignored every other investment that came my way, that's probably what I would tell myself.
So don't get googly eyed.
Yeah, like like if you're good at something, like you don't need to, like I don't know how to bake a cake, I'm not going to go open a bakery, right? It's so just if you understand the card, it can be lucrative, and stick with what you know.
In terms of risk, like going back, do you think you would have taken bigger swings and bigger risks if you were like 25 and say, in our shoes, or would you have kind of toned it down a little bit?
So it's a unique situation for me because I started in making money at such a very young age, and I didn't come from any money. So like starting at 15, I was giving my mom money for the mortgage and paying all that. So once I started making, a lot of money at a young age, like I kind of lost respect for money early on, which is good and bad. Like when you go to Vegas and you gamble, like that's bad. But on the flip side, when it comes time to take risks and just go with your gut, I always went all in on any investment. Like if I thought I was good, so like going back to high school, probably sophomore year, so maybe like 16 years old at the time, I probably built my bankroll up to like, I don't know, it was like $100,000 at the time. And someone brought me, I don't know if you remember the 97 Masters, the taller Tiger Woods rookies.
No.
So, okay. So yeah, so there's a gold foil version of those. And like the math, it was like the biggest no-brainer in the world to buy these. So I bought them. I put every dollar I had into them, thinking they were 7s and 8s. Well, once I got them, I found out there was glue on the back, and they all came back like 3s and 4s, and I ended up losing like 80% of my investment. So that was like, and I went all in on that, and that kind of taught me like my first lesson. I wish I would have remembered the lesson in real estate, but I've always been willing. Yeah, I've always been willing to gamble and kind of go for what I believe in.
Yeah, it's always interesting hearing these stories of like the big swings. I think it makes life a little bit more exciting. Take the big wins, and you also take the big losses instead of just every day kind of being the same thing.
If you have more wins than losses, like I'm sure if people who follow me, like I try to post some of my losses because I think it's more fun than posting my wins. Everybody has wins. Everybody talks about how they're the greatest card investors in the world, and like it's just I think somebody at my level of the hobby, to show my losses that hey, like I've made a lot of good decisions. I don't need to sit here and show everybody my decisions. I bought a lot of Mahomes, a lot of Brady. Like I think it's way more fun to say, hey, even I mess up too. Andrew Luck, perfect example. Like
yeah, I remember that you with Gary Vee. Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
I remember that moment too, because you were on that podcast. I think the week before that announcement happened too.
It's crazy, and like I would have told you that was super safe. He was a quarterback like I loved, and like you can't predict that kind of stuff. So that one's been like a really bad loss, but it's like to look back, I would do it again. So it is what it is.
What do you do with these investments if they don't pan out? Do you still hold these Andrew Luck cards, or do you sell them immediately?
No, I usually hang on to them. Like I think it's sort of a reminder. The weird thing is like I still think the Andrew Luck. I don't think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Like there's still the chance he comes back, but there'll be a delay, and then people remember like, oh, this guy was a really good quarterback for 6 or 7 years, and maybe they'll come back a little bit. But right now, it just sits in a box in a warehouse, and I try not to. Yeah, it's PC. Like Matt Castle's PC. Like it's when it's that big a loss, I'd rather just eat it and enjoy it.
When it rockets up, you'll be the first one I message.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously you've been in this for a while. Let's take a step back. What are some of the the highest of highs, and what are some of the lowest of lows during your experience in the hobby?
The highest of highs and the lowest of lows. I mean, honestly, like daily, when you're getting calls for deals, like there's that rush. So I've bought in some pretty crazy deals over the years. One of them that was like really exciting was I get a call and the guy says he has 980 mint 61 Flair basketball cards. He's like, I got 18 Chamberlain rookies, I got 18 West, I got 18 Oscar Robinsons, and he's like, I want 90,000 for the deal. And I said, okay, like that's, you know, the guy knew his stuff. It was just outside Philadelphia. So I fly in the next day and I walk in and the guy has 6 unopened 61 Flair basketball boxes. So he was just running the math of like, you know, how many cards per pack and all this. He never mentioned on the phone that they were sealed boxes. So like that was a deal. Like I was already kind of prepared to buy the deal for around 90 grand as long as the cards, but you know, being in box form, I mean, it turned into like an absolute home run. So that was a pretty just like shell shock, you know, deal. Another wild run and exciting time we can talk about was the Tiger Woods year. And it was just a fun time in my life where I had, so my junior year, I built a house. I'd started building a house, but I couldn't close on it because I wasn't old enough. So I was building a house and I had to wait till I was 18 to close on the house. So my whole senior year, I was 18 and I had like 15 friends from high school working for me. And my whole basement was my office at the time. And I started opening up a few of the Tiger Woods, you know, upper deck boxes. And I'd send in a few here and I realized that it was just a math game for me. And that's pretty much a lot of all cards is, right? It just comes down to math where the boxes at the time were X amount. You get 7 Tigers, 3 or 4 would be gem mint, and every box you open, you made X amount of dollars. So I was like, instead of doing 10 or 50 of these, let's do this on a massive scale. So to long story short, in a few months span, we ended up cracking about 8,000 cases, which was about 50,000 Tiger Woods rookies amongst all the other stuff. And we had girls over at the house. We're drinking. I had all these friends. I'm giving them bonuses if they hit jersey cards. And the thing that sucks is like, you know, there's no social media back then. There's no iPhones. There's no camera phones. Like there was a point in the basement where the wrappers were 4 feet off the ground where you could almost like swim in them. The whole basement was wrappers. They would bring in, you know, 3 or 4 pallets at a time and it was just a crazy. I would do anything to have video and pictures of those moments, but you didn't even think about it because back then cards were nerdy and it wasn't like it is now. Like people look, you know, oh, you do cards, that's incredible. Back then, you know, like your girlfriend's parents would say, hey, what do you do for a living? You're like, oh, baseball cards. They said, that's super cute, but what do you do for money? And it was almost like this stigma. It was embarrassing. So we didn't think to document anything with cameras or videos because why would you? Obviously it's way different now. Everyone's, you know, walk around the shows with all their, you know, their cameras and stuff, but that was a pretty crazy moment. The second part, like the lows, obviously going broke was not fun. Anytime I've had a massive loss on a deal, but like looking back at it now, anytime I got crushed on a deal and I was depressed or bummed out about it, and everybody would kind of say, don't worry, like this will, you know, at the time you don't want to hear it, but like it's good that it happens, right? Like I look back and I'm so happy that all that happened to me because it taught me so much. In the moment, you want to just choke people because you're like, no, you don't know what I'm going through. So, yeah, the lows would just be losing everything. And at the time, it was awful. But now I'm glad it happened to me because it put me in a much better mind with how to deal with stuff. So I guess that's the best way to answer that is, you know, I try not to get I'm a pretty positive person.
Well, I want to ask you, like, I'm looking through your Instagram and you have like obviously a crazy collection. And with the hobby nowadays, what happens is 90% of the people in the hobby are always like, yo, that's crazy. That's amazing. That's insane. But there's always like kind of like the 10% or even the 1% that's kind of like, why are you showing off? Or like you know, what like you got lucky, right? I think that's probably one that you probably get a lot because you started so early. But just hearing the stories about how you were so thinking through, even through like the ages where no one was even talking about cards, how do you deal with that, man?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like 95% is so much love, but then you always have the trolls. Like, it is what it is. Like that, I actually like the trolls. I feel sorry for some of them, honestly, because like, I don't think they understand the hard work, and it is. There's a little. It's success is when super hard work crosses paths with a little bit of luck, right?
100%.
And I'm lucky in certain ways that I got into cards and stuff. But what they don't see is like, I gave up my childhood. I gave up my 20s. I worked 16-hour days for 16-hour days for so long to be able to enjoy some stuff. So, yeah, and I just it's funny because I'm pretty open. Like, I'll talk to anybody. I'm out there on social media. Hey, like, anybody can reach out. I'm willing to talk about anything. And usually the guys that are saying negative stuff are kind of hiding behind a keyboard and like, hey, let's get on a podcast and talk about whatever you want to talk about. So, yeah, I honestly, I feel bad because I'm sure there's a lot of hurt in some of those guys that are, hating and the jealousy. But the truth is like, with what you see now, it didn't happen overnight. Like, it's taken a long time to get here. So, and it's been a good couple years too. So, there's a lot of people that came in. People should be careful that it's not always this easy, right? Like, this next year, who knows what's going on in the world? Like, it could get silly. So I'm worried that some of the people that have made easy money in the last year or two, things could shift a little bit. But yeah, to go to the original question, I love the people that are supportive, and I love the trolls even more because they kind of make me laugh.
Yeah, that's the thing, man, because I see some things that you post out there. I'm like, geez, that's insane. But then you'll also see some comments just like, wow, like what happened to this person?
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I actually have another quick question. While you're building this whole entire card empire, essentially, like, did you, at this point in time, like, I don't know if you get this question a lot, but like, did you really see this going on, like how the culture is right now? Like, or were you just like, you know what, you're just building something that you love, and it's just kind of like fell in your lap where it's like, oh, everybody is interested? Or did you have that vision that's like, no, people, this is gonna be a cultural phenomenon?
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm really curious about.
So here's the crazy thing is I actually really did. And
Wow.
but here's the problem is, as good as I did, and I'm not complaining at all. It was an amazing run. But what COVID did, in my opinion, is it sped everything up like 4 or 5 years. Like, I didn't expect this boom to happen for another 5 years. I thought I was going to have more time to accumulate. And I've been accumulating for 10 years, but I wasn't as rushed as I probably should have been. To me, COVID, made this happen 5 years quicker than what I thought. So yes, I did see this coming, maybe not as crazy as it is. And, NFTs kind of threw a little monkey wrench and stuff, but ultimately I still think the amount of people involved is so low. Like, I always say, like, 15 or 20 years ago, there may have been 5,000 real buyers. And what I mean by that is somebody who's willing to go to the National and spend real money on cards. And that number's gone from 5 to 10,000 to 100,000. So, like, what happens in the next couple of years when that number goes from 100,000 to 1 million or 2 million? And I really think we're headed that way, especially with like Fanatics. We're going to start seeing Super Bowl commercials for sports cards. We're going to start seeing NBA and TNT on the scoreboard. It's going to say, Fanatics. So we're still early. There's been a big rush, but if you're bullish over the next 5 to 10 years, I still think it's going to be really good.
Yeah, that's great. And actually, we brought you on here as well because I know you're doing a lot of different businesses. You mentioned you have your hands in like 16 different companies. Some exciting things. Like, Raymond was telling us about how you have a grading company that's up and coming, and I'm excited to hear about it, actually. I just wanted to, maybe you could talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I invested in a grading company called ISA Grading, and for a couple of reasons. Like, one, obviously there's still a massive, there's PSA, BGS, SGC, like they're the big three. It is what it is. Like, and I still use them. Most of my collection is PSA and SGC. But there is that niche for another company, especially for the stuff that's $100 to $500. Like, I don't think the turnaround time is ever going to clear up because the market's going to keep expanding. So I saw that niche, but also the reason I made the investment is just being totally honest. I saw some of these other people popping up that they don't really know what they're doing. Like, you can have a very cool and holder and all this experience, but like ultimately, if the stuff's not graded accurately, or you're grading reprints or fakes, and other people are getting burned on that, like, so that really bothered me. So
Right.
I thought, let me jump in here. So, I have a bunch of guys that work for me. Two of the guys that have been with me for like 11 or 12 years, grading with me and all taught by me, they moved over and they're basically the head graders. Anything that's really good that comes in, I make sure I glance at it too, just so, we're not, but for me, like, this is all second nature. Like, when I see something, like, almost as you're opening the package, I could say, oh, that's a fake Jordan, or that's a fake. It's just super easy for me. So, yeah, I think there's room for a number 4 with all the cards coming in the backlog. And like I said, I think the number 1 priority is stuff graded accurately and not just smoke and mirrors of, somebody who doesn't know what they're doing grading cards.
Not naming names. But hey, you know what? How about the vision of ISA, in the next 3 months, in a year, and 5 years?
Yeah.
Like, where do you guys see yourself as a company?
Yeah, it's been taken off. I mean, so I hired a CEO to run it, and so I'm so focused on all these different things,
Right.
But all the businesses, but yeah, he's doing a great job. Like, I think like they took in last week on a Thursday, they took in 2,800 cards.
Oh, wow.
They've been averaging a normal day is like 400 to 600 cards. So it's really rocking and rolling. Stuff started to hit eBay. A lot of card shops are partnering with them. So the one thing I could say is the holders online versus in person, just like they don't do it justice at all. So people see them online, they're like, oh, these holders look like shit. But like, and then once people get them in hand, they're like, oh my God, these are amazing. And I think most of the businesses, somebody buys something off eBay, and then they end up submitting 30 or 40 cards because they love the way the holders look. Yeah, I think this is the perfect spot for, a number 4. It's like, it's not going to be $1 billion business, but I think it is an amazing spot. Here's another great thing that I think is very important with turnaround time is I call it the bull, or I don't want to, the Henry Ruggs experiment, like if you had bull like a year ago when he was hot, and a PSA 10 was $200, and everyone's rushing to send in their bulls, right? But like if you had it in, like, let's say an ISA holder, even if it went for a 50% discount, like you sold the card, you took the money, you're able to turn it. Now, if you have bull cards that you sent in a year ago, you're getting them back, and now you're kind of like sitting there like, oh shit, I don't even want to pay the grading fees. Like, these things are worth nothing. So there's a lot of stuff where there's advantage, but I would tell people straight up, if you had a really nice Jordan rookie that's a 9 or a 52 Mantle, of course send it to PSA or SGC. ISA would be happy to grade it, but like I would never suggest that. If you have Acuna updates, yeah, I mean, ISA would be a great spot for something like that. So our hobby's big enough where there's definitely room for a couple big ones.
So say, for example, like tomorrow, ISA receives 3,000, 5,000 cards on a daily basis. What would your plan to be to address those influxes in volume?
Yeah, so we joke with
grading companies, right? Like,
no, like we joke that it's that like a best case scenario is really the worst case scenario, right? Like, so it's hard for if you're not in business to understand that, but we have preparation in place where so I still, with my whole company, like I have a total of 16 guys that work with us, and we have 6 or 7 guys that are pretty smart. That like 2 guys have been with me for like 11 or 12 years, and the other guys I've trained, and I would back these guys up in the grading room against anybody. Like they really know their shit. So we have a few systems in place right now. We're training people as we go. So we're trying to stay ahead of the curve. And right now, those guys, I have them helping out in some other aspects of some of my other businesses, but they're also learning. So, so right now, like we did take in that, we had that massive day, but like at this point, we're capable of grading 1,000 cards if we have to a day. I only want to do, half of that, and just so we can take time and be consistent. So like when it goes from, 400 to 500 a day consistently to 700 or 800 a day, I'll make sure that we're able to do 1,200 a day. When we get to 1,000 a day, I'll make sure we can do 15. So I'm going to try to stay ahead of the curve, and I'm just in a lucky spot where I have other employees that we can pre-hire ahead of the pace to stay ahead of the curve. But I think I'd rather it be slow and steady, but if we did have just some crazy absurd rush, yeah, it'd be a weird spot. Like everyone would be working Christmas Day, weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and like I said, it's an amazing, horrible problem to have.
Whatever gets the job done, right?
Yeah. I actually really like the awareness of like the angle ISA is taking, right? Like, most of these grading companies that are not in the big three will go try to attack the big dog, right? Let's say we could replace, we will do better, but I think the recognition of saying, hey, we could there's room for everybody, is a way I think most companies don't really take.
Yeah, I mean, to think that you're going to compete with PSA is silly, and that's what with like some of the hate. Like when I go back to the trolls, they're like, "Well, you're not going to bring PSA money." Like, well, yeah, no shit. Like, I mean, hopefully, it gets to a point where, everything is just a percentage of PSA. Like, or like one day it is PSA money. That'd be amazing. But like, there's definitely a niche for that market. For, if you're paying less in fees, no upcharges, and you're getting stuff back. The no upcharge. So to think that you're going to compete with PSA is just like the most silly thing that somebody can think. So yeah, I have I'm not delusional on that one. Like I said, I still have a massive, like my PSA collection might be honestly behind Nat. It might be the second biggest collection in the world. So yeah, I'm pretty sure Nat has me trumped, but so I'm a huge PSA supporter. I'm a huge SGC supporter. Yeah. So I'm pretty, I'm a pretty straightforward with what's going on. So yeah, to try to deny that is just silly.
Right.
To keep in line with like the quality and like making sure that things are done correctly, are there any cards that ISA doesn't grade or doesn't touch?
So right now we don't grade patch cards. And there's two reasons. One, we don't have a patch mold yet, and I keep going back and forth. So with all regular cards, I'm pretty confident we can detect all alterations, color, all that stuff. But with patch cards, and nobody can. But people fake jerseys, right? They pull the patch cards out, they pull the jerseys out, and there's no way to detect. There just isn't. Like they're so good. So if we do end up grading patch cards, we're going to put a disclaimer that says, like, listen, we're grading the card and no human can tell if this patch has been replaced. So it is what it is. So I don't know if we want to authenticate that. I don't want to mislead people and have them believe that like we're saying, hey, this patch is 100% legit. So that's kind of been the struggle with that. But we've been talking about it internally about the mold. And that's not really our niche either, though. Like the patch cards are usually more expensive cards. And like I said, like I feel like our bread and butter is the $100 to $500 bulk stuff that baseball, like prospecting for baseball.
Yeah,
I mean there'd be nothing worse than somebody being hot and having to wait a year to get back a guy who isn't in the league anymore.
Right. And
yeah, so like if someone sent us a LeBron patch auto, like I would tell them like, hey, send this to PSA, so yeah, I don't know if we'll go down that road or not. So yeah, as of right now, it's just really thick jersey and patch cards are the one thing we don't grade. But yeah, like we have 16 different insert sizes for 50s, T206, Gaudy, all the vintage. So like the stuff really popped. Like T206 with the black insert, like it looks nice.
So how does it work? Do you have like a different machine for every single size of card, or like a different type of folder, or use the same machine to pull up the same card, different cards?
Yeah, different inserts, 2 different holder sizes, and then we use 2 different boom machines depending on the size of the. We're going to probably do some videos early next year showing some of the process. We want to be transparent and show everybody like the behind the scenes and how all that looks.
Very cool.
Interesting stuff. Looking forward to see how it all pieces together.
For sure.
I guess in terms of like grading cards yourself, you've been doing it for decades. Any crazy grading stories?
I don't like to talk about big wins, but like,
do it for the trolls.
No, I don't like that. I mean, I've done really well. Like, I don't want to sit here and talk about. I would say the more humbling time was in that comeback from 2007 to 2010. It's not really a big win, but like what was so amazing was that was the time where, like all Derek Jeter cards were a couple $100 a piece in tens, and you could buy Jeter cards for 10 to 15 cents. So when you don't have a bankroll, and that's the other thing is like, you send it, you go through 1,000 Derek Jeter cards and you pull out 100 for grading. And let's say you go 70 out of 100, to somebody looking at the invoice, they're like, oh, he just went 70 out of 100. Be like, no, I went 70 out of 1,000, but you didn't see the 10 hours that got put in, scanning through all that. So, yeah, I mean, when I was on my comeback, I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment, ignored the world for 2 years, and just literally, my goal was to ship out 200 cards a day, list 200 cards a day on eBay, and ship 200 cards. Or ship, list, and send out for grading every day was 200 cards, and it was a lot of work.
Was your operation all in Michigan and like through the mail, or did you go like travel around, go to a lot of shows?
I was doing show. I'm so showed out though now because like I started shows really young. I mean, there was a point when like I was skipping school. Like there was are you guys familiar with the Frankenstein show?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, like in high school, there was times where Tuesday night I would fly to LA. I would skip school Wednesday, and then take the red eye home and be back in class Thursday.
Oh wow!
Did your parents know?
Yeah, my mom she was very supportive. Like I helped her out a lot, and cool. So I had a ton of support at a young age. But I used to do a ton of shows. Like I would skip a lot of Fridays. Shows were amazing. Shows were way different back then than they are now. It's everyone pulls up eBay, and it's like there was a lot more like on the fly, not as much information, and you could buy deals. If you knew the current market, it was a lot easier to buy deals, buy dealers out, and more people have money now. So it's a lot different from that aspect too, where before on a Sunday, if somebody had to do X amount of sales and it was a horrible show, you could probably buy out their whole booth because they needed money. Now it just seems like when you go to a show, everybody's done so well, like nobody needs to cash in at the end of the weekend. So it's a lot harder to catch somebody, with their pants down and buy their whole collection now.
So people how did people price cards back then? Did you kind of like have like a ballpark idea of like where certain things were? Was there like any sorts of like truth that people looked at?
It was kind of like the Wild Wild West in pricing because even the SMR was like super far behind. Like we used to run ads like paying 150% of SMR. Like I remember they would have like a Jerry Rice Topps rookie, SMR 10 would be $500, and like that card is impossible. And in the secondary market, the card I think they were selling for like 3,000 or 4,000. So I would put ads like paying 150% for certain rookies and tens, and people who are just focused on the SMR because eBay wasn't really everybody just goes to eBay now. You could buy stuff at shows and just eBay it, and we could go on forever about that, but it was just a completely different world. Like people were pricing stuff on the fly, and just an entirely different world.
And did you do a lot of business like through the mail as well, like through the internet, or what were the biggest differences back then, like in the way people interacted versus now, where people just like buy and sell on Instagram all day?
I mean, I remember, really early on being in like AOL chat rooms, in like 93, 94, and sending cards out with the self-addressed stamped envelope. Like you could go all the way back to like, 93 for that. But I started selling on eBay in the late 90s and auction houses. But I would say a lot of it was at shows. I mean, I was probably doing 30, 35 shows a year. So, almost every weekend we were at a show.
Do you still go to a lot of shows nowadays?
No, I mean pre-COVID I was, but like I have 4 kids now. I think through COVID I booked 20 flights and I canceled 19 of them. So I'm become a homebody. Obviously I went to the National. I always go to the National. If the weather's good, I'll drive over to the Chicago show. That's a good show. The Philadelphia show, but I just don't have I'm the first to admit I don't have the same fire that I used to have, at a young age. It's just and it's exciting to see the fire in these younger guys' eyes. Like they're doing all these shows, they're documenting it. Like that was me, just undocumented. Yeah, like they're all going to be very successful. I don't have the same fire. I'm happy doing a 10-hour day now. Like I don't need to do 17-hour days anymore.
Brian's ahead of the curve. He documents everything on his YouTube channel. Right there.
I'm trying to be the Jason of the hobby now.
Yeah,
It's been 25 years. Yeah, we'll make it work.
But
Jason, I love watching all this stuff. I mean, I all the guys that document the stuff. I think it's cool to see what they're doing at shows. Like I'm so happy to see where the state of the hobby is right now. It's awesome.
Yeah, but Jason, thank you so much for coming on, man. Guys, check out OSHA Sports. That's like I think that's your parent company, right? Like that's like
OTA Sports, but whatever.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I always say it wrong. Sorry, Mike. I always say it wrong. But also most importantly, check out ISA. I think it's super interesting how you are super aware and understand, what the hobby kind of needs, right? The $100 to $500 range. I think that's super important. That you guys understand that, hey, that's a need in the hobby. But where else can they find you, by the way, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. OTIA.com, OTIA.com, and then Facebook, Instagram, it's at OTIA Sports. Same thing, Facebook and Instagram for the grading company, ISA Grading, at ISA Grading. TikTok, all that stuff.
Awesome.
Cool. And as usual, you can find me on Instagram at Asian Cards and Brian on YouTube as Sunday League Investors, where he posts almost weekly content. Oh, that's
Super Mario! Oh my God,
Super Mario.
Jeez. Ended off with a bang.
I actually stopped at the vault today for to show you guys and grabbed a few cards.
Oh, show it. We'll clip these too. Yeah. So show us your collection? Yeah, because we'll clip this and then we'll put this on YouTube as well.
I'll pull it up a little bit so everyone's
like further away.
Yeah, further. Yeah.
Maybe like there we go.
Jackie. Higher up. Oh wow, that's a beautiful card. Yeah, the color on that is pretty difficult, especially for a card that is that old. Here's the back. Can you flip the card around?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. You said that was a pop 8?
Pop 8, yeah. And then this is Curry Refractor, Crow. I might actually sell it. He's super hot right now. Like I don't want to sell it, but I mean he's super hot right now. So like maybe
I've never seen a refractor.
Yeah, you got like Jordan autograph stuff, like but like some remember like that's the shot when Jordan hit over Russell, signed ticket.
How'd you get that?
I bought this a few years ago. I mean, like, I don't even remember. Probably an auction. Like, I love stuff like this is pretty cool. Abraham Lincoln signed check.
Oh wow.
And then
like people get it, they don't cash, right?
Yeah, I mean, who knows back then? But then like Thomas Jefferson signed check.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, wow. Do the picture deposit. See what happens.
So like that's the kind of stuff that I like. I mean, like everybody likes like this kind of stuff, like the LeBron,
But like, just casually brings out LeBron black extra.
Yeah, but I'm into this. This is the stuff that I like. Like this is for me. Like the video games I'm really big into. Like this brings me back to my childhood. So yeah, the cards are cool, but I've seen them all, so I veer into some of this other goofy stuff.
Do you own any soccer cards, by the way?
I do, not as much as I should, but I do have some soccer stuff. Yeah.
I'm just curious, what was your favorite one? Do you have a favorite one at least?
It's also weird because it's printed overseas, so it's just hard to really know what. I honestly, I've always been skeptical on what to buy because I don't know like how much they actually printed of all that stuff. Like it kind of scares me.
That's very true.
It's not something I want to dump like millions of dollars into and then find out they're just still printing it. So
Yep.
I think probably sticking with numbered stuff would be the safe bet with soccer.
Do you grade video games? Like you buy them raw? Or
I've tried. I've gotten crushed so far, but I know the owner of Wada really well, Dennis, and like he's kind of helped me like figure out like there's a lot of similar qualities in grading. Like, but I just I'm 39. I grew up on Nintendo. I love the video games. Like it's my escape from cards.
You crack one open and start playing it sometime.
Right? Yeah.
That's an alpha move right there. That's a very alpha move to do. Yeah. That'll go viral for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Well,
thanks, Jason.
Well, Jason, it was nice meeting you, man.
Yeah, you as well. I appreciate it, guys, so much.
Yeah. Have a good rest of your day.
All right. Stay in touch. Later, guys.
All right.